Hey everyone! In this video, we are going to be learning how to create a mapping rule if you have been given the vertex form of a quadratic. I hope that everyone remembers from last video that a vertex form of a quadratic is any quadratic that's written in the form y equals a x minus h squared plus k. Now, the actual letters don't matter, but it's that form that it has to look in. What is important is that you know what each of those letters mean. So the A is our vertical stretch. So it determines how tall and skinny our parabola is or how short and chonky it's going to be. And the H is our horizontal translation, and it is a measure of how much our parabola shifts to the left or to the right. The K, that's the vertical translation, and it's how much our parabola shifts up or shifts down. Now, we've graphed parabolas in lots of different ways in the past. Usually we do this by finding key points, like the x-intercepts and the y-intercept, and then trying to connect these key points. Mapping rules are a little bit different because mapping rules transform individual points. So you're not really looking for those key points. You can actually just take any point x comma y, and it will give you a new point on your new graph. Now, we don't actually have to apply that in this video, but I wanted you to know what a mapping rule is for. So instead of finding key points, mapping rules are like transformation rules. It teaches you how to transform a point from some known base graph. In this case, y equals x squared. So if you know a point that's on y equals x squared, a mapping rule is the instructions for transforming that graph into your new graph. So here's the equation for a mapping rule. X comma y, whatever point you've been given that existed on your original graph, is going to be transformed into x plus ht. That's our horizontal translation, so it just becomes x plus ht, comma. Our y is going to become vertical stretch vs multiplied by y, and at the very end you add on the vertical translation. That is the equation for a mapping rule. That is how you make one. That is our goal before we get to the end of this video, that you can make a mapping rule just like that. Here's example 1. We're provided with a quadratic that's written in vertex form. So y equals 2 x minus 1 squared plus 3. That's vertex form. That's a quadratic. What we need to do is find the three transformations. The first transformation is vertical stretch. This is always the number that's being multiplied in front. So in this case, our vertical stretch is 2. The horizontal translation, that's ht. And it's always the opposite of what's being added to the x. In this case, x has a -1 after it, so the horizontal translation needs to be a +1. Always the opposite, little bit of shenanigans there. The vertical translation is straightforward because the vertical translation is always just what's being added on at the end. A 3 is being added on at the end, so it's a 3. Once we have the three transformations, we can fill them into our mapping rule equation. X comma y is transformed into, okay, so we're just going to fill these, we have the three transformations, we're going to fill them into our equation. X plus 1, because that's our horizontal translation, comma, the vertical stretch times y, so 2y, and then we add on the vertical translation, plus 3. Mapping rule complete. This rule will allow us to take any point from an old parabola and transform it into our new equation. Big check mark. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do 2 more examples to make sure that everyone is feeling good with this and that you can make them on your own. Example number 2. Once again, you have to be given a quadratic that's provided in vertex form. Standard form won't help you. That has different rules. You won't be able to get the transformations from that. In vertex form, y equals 1/2 x plus 3 squared plus 4. We need to get the three transformations. Vertical stretch, that's that number that's in front. It's a 1/2. The horizontal translation, that's the ht, and it's the opposite of what's being added to the x, so it's going to be a -3. And finally, the vertical translation, which is the number that's added on at the end, and that's a 4. We have our three transformations. I'm going to write up the equation for a mapping rule one more time, that x comma y is transformed into x plus ht comma vsy plus vt. If you know this mapping rule equation, and you can get the three transformations, you can make a mapping rule. I know you can do it. So x comma y is going to be transformed into x plus our ht. Our ht is -3, so that means we're going to get an x subtract 3, comma. Our vertical stretch multiplied by y is a 1/2 y, and then finally you end a mapping rule by adding on the vertical translation, plus 4. Mapping rule complete. So if you can come up with those three transformations and you know the equation for a mapping rule, you can fill these values in. And this is the transformation for altering points from an original parabola. Last example, example number 3. Once again, it's a quadratic provided in vertex form. Y is equal to -3 x plus 2 squared plus 5. If you've been asked to find a mapping rule, the first thing you're going to want to do is identify the three transformations. The vertical stretch is the number multiplied in front. That's a -3. The horizontal translation is the opposite of what's being added to the x. So because it's a plus 2 in the equation, the horizontal translation is a -2, and that vertical translation is just what's being added on in the end, so it's a plus 5. Our vertical translation is 5. We have our three transformations. We can go ahead and plug them in to that mapping rule equation. X comma y will be transformed into x plus our ht, in this case it's a -2, so x minus 2, comma. Our vertical stretch times y. Our vertical stretch is -3, so that's a -3y. We finish this off by adding the vertical translation, which is a plus 5. That was speeded up, but now we can get mapping rules. I hope you were able to follow along and that you're feeling like a clever little cupcake right now who has no problem making mapping rules. Once you can successfully make a mapping rule, we will be using these to transform quadratics. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you next time.